Welcome to the New Mid. I'm Michelle Newman, former award-winning television executive turned marketing strategist and life coach. Each week, I bring you inspiring insights with the same intention to help you live an abundant second half. I'm so grateful you're here. Let's get started. Dr. Hauser is an integrative and functional medicine physician in Frederick, Maryland, and the founder of Hauser Health. A graduate of the Military Medical School, USUHS, in 1994, Dr. Hauser spent 16 years in the Air Force as a board-certified radiologist. Over the past 10 years, he has switched his concentration to integrative medicine and completed a 2-year fellowship with Dr. Andrew Well at the University of Arizona in integrative medicine. His current practice focuses on autoimmune diseases, GI issues, anxiety, fatigue, thyroid, and weight loss. Dr. Hauser can be frequently found lecturing on the benefits of integrative and functional medicine around the state. Well, welcome, Dr. Hauser. Thank you so much for coming to the New Mid.
Well, thanks, Michelle. I appreciate being here.
So I have to ask you this. Has anyone called you Doogie Hauser?
Well, yeah, not so much anymore. But back when I was an intern, I was a surgical intern at the hospital, and everybody used to ask me. And it got to the point where I actually started getting a little bit annoyed with it because it happened multiple times a day. So I went into this one patient's room, and his wife was there. And I said, "Hi, I'm Dr. Hauser." And she said, "Does anybody call you?" And I said, "Yes, Doogie." And she said, "Who's Doogie?" She goes, "I'm thinking of Hauser from Total Recall." And it blew my mind because I didn't remember that. And apparently Arnold Schwarzenegger's character's last name was Hauser on that show.
Oh, my gosh.
I had to go back and watch that movie. So.
That's really funny. I actually met Neil Patrick Harris. He's a great guy.
Oh, I like him.
He's a really good guy. I think he'd like you as well.
Well, hook us up.
I will. So I'm so excited to talk to you because I'm kind of wondering what in the world is this whole integrative medicine thing with Western medicine? But before we get to that, tell us, how did you come about doing it? Like, I understand it was something with your own personal life,
right?
That led you to integrative medicine.
Yeah, that's exactly right. About 10, 12 years ago, I started having my own medical issues. So it was really about the time I was 40 years old. We had had a lot of stress. We had moved out to Maryland. I'd started a new job. We have young kids at that time. And my health just started falling apart. Everything was going wrong. Everything from anxiety to IBS to Bell's palsy, you name it, anxiety. It was all happening to me. And I went to my doctor and I said, "Hey, I'm not feeling too hot. Can you help me out?" And he ran the tests and I got back the results that all of my patients come in and say the same thing as, "My doctor told me I'm normal."
Really? Wow.
Yeah. So
you're
then
like, wait a minute, but I don't feel normal.
Exactly.
Is this normal? Not feeling well? Is that normal? Oh, no.
Right. And I asked the question that probably a lot of your audience is asking, is this how it has to be? Am I just getting older, right? I turned 40.
Yeah, I'm hitting midlife,
apart.
And I've heard all of this. Yeah, everything falls apart. So do I just have to accept it?
Exactly. And I wouldn't accept it. I was very active. My wife always said I had 2 speeds, on and off. I was either going 100 miles an hour or I was asleep. And
so you're one of those people that as soon as you get out of the bed and your feet hit the floor, you're gone. You're like,
absolutely.
Yeah,
active. go. And all of a sudden I couldn't do that.
Wow.
And it was terrible. So I started doing what everybody does. I started hitting Dr. Google.
Oh,
and
yeah,
Dr. Google, he was a good friend of mine, and I learned a lot. He can be confusing, though, right?
Yes, and scary.
Very
like
scary.
I have so diagnosed myself with scary things.
Yeah. You'll come up with 10, 12 different diseases that you have,
yes,
probably which
I know.
you don't have any of them.
Right. I didn't have any of them, but boy, was I scared for a while.
Yeah. So I started looking into them, and I started discovering there was something kind of cool called integrative medicine. And that's kind of the path that I started on, was learning about that.
And what is integrative medicine?
Oh, well, integrative medicine's pretty easy. Everybody thinks it's more complicated than it is, but it's really just the integration or the combination of all the medicines from around the world. So I'm a Western medicine trained doctor. I've been practicing for 25 years. Mm-hmm. It's not like I'm going to throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? I'm not getting rid of my training. I've got too much I've learned, and there's a lot of good things about Western medicine, but there's a lot of good things about medicines from around the world. So integrative medicine says, hey, why don't we just take the best parts of each one and combine it all together and just use those? So, for example, I don't want to throw away Western medicine. If I walk out of here and get hit by a bus, take me to the level 1 shock trauma, put me in surgery. Yeah. Put me full of antibiotics and pain meds. When I'm healing, I'll use all the other medicines. I'll use everything from meditation to herbs and whatnot to heal my body and to recuperate.
So integrative medicine is a little less like medicine, less pills and stuff like that. It's more taking a natural food, meditation, all of that sort of thing.
A large part of it is.
Like what?
Well, it's everything. So you look at all of that, and you really want to look at the person from the ground up. You want to fix what's at the core of their wrong.
Okay, so if someone were, like, for instance, how you felt, fatigued, a lot of anxiety, probably weren't sleeping that well.
Sleep fell apart big time.
Yes. So I'm sure there's a lot of people that are out there right now listening to me saying, that's me. Yes, that's me. So how do they find someone? Do you go to Dr. Google and say integrative medicine? Like, how would they go about finding someone like you? Well, if you're in Frederick, Maryland, you can go to Dr. Hauser. But if you're in Ohio or,
Yeah, I've got a couple of patients from Ohio. People travel pretty far to find a good integrative doctor. And I think a lot of times they get it confused with all the other types of medicines out there because they throw it into that alternative. If you're not Western medicine, you're alternative medicine. And the problem is they start looking at some of that witchcraft stuff out there.
Hocus pocus.
Yeah, and they lose sight of what's going on. So when you're dealing with an MD, you've got the background, you've got that traditional medicine background there, but you've got somebody that said, I'm going back for more education, that I want to learn. What does China or India or whatever country you want to name, what do they do that's better than us? And I'll give you a little scary statistic.
Okay.
So last year I was invited up to Towson University to lecture on the state of healthcare. And so I was in front of the audience and I said, hey, everybody, do you remember when the Olympic team, the hockey team won in 1980, the Miracle on Ice?
Miracle on Ice. That was awesome.
Right. We're number one. We're number one,
it was
right?
Awesome.
Well, I want you to start shouting right now, we're number 37. We're number 37. Because that's what the U.S. is ranked for healthcare worldwide.
Wow.
That means 36 other countries do healthcare better than us, and they keep their patients, their people alive longer. And for the first time ever, the U.S., for the last 2 years, our life expectancy has actually started to decline.
Wow.
Right.
That's
36
shocking.
other countries, it's still going up.
Well, what's interesting is, and maybe it's just because of the programs that I'm starting to watch now that I'm 51, but I see a lot of ads for medication. Mm-hmm. It seems like there's a pill for that. Like, I can't sleep. There's a pill for that. I have anxiety. There's a pill for that. It just feels like right now there's just so much medication out there that, I don't have to think about what am I doing. So when you get a patient, do you do blood work? Is that where you go from, or how do you start with a patient?
Well, in my practice, I'm kind of unique because I'm a specialist. So on top of being an integrative physician, I only specialize in certain things to really focus. So the couple areas I focus on are GI issues, of course. Okay. I focus on everything I had.
Okay.
So I focus on GI issues, IBS, IBD. I focus on autoimmune issues.
Ooh, okay.
Thyroid's a huge part of my practice, Hashimoto's and hypothyroidism, and fatigue, of course, anxiety, and then I have a huge weight loss program.
Okay, and so when you get someone, what are the first steps that you take? Do you look at their diet? Do you look at what's causing their anxiety? Because when I looked at your website, I noticed that you were sitting in a chair next to someone like you were talking to them.
Oh, good point. Right. So when you go to a doctor today, how long is your average face time with the MD?
Well, not very long. Usually you have he just put the seven fingers up, so it must be seven
it's
minutes.
7 minutes, yeah.
Wow,
I
that's
know,
not very long.
Amazing? Now, you may be there for an hour and a half, right?
Right.
But
in the waiting room.
Right, in the waiting room. Maybe the nurse is doing your blood pressure.
Right.
But you're not getting doctor FaceTime. So when the doctor finally comes in, what do? You start unloading on him, right?
Right.
You just start blathering like a fire hydrant because you want to get it all in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, in my practice, the first thing that happens is you come down, you sit on a nice comfy chair. We're in a nice office. There's no white sterile sheets and
right.
stainless steel everywhere. And we start talking. And the first thing a lot of people do is they start just shooting at me like a fire hose because they think they've got the 7 minutes, but they really have an hour.
Wow.
And so I'll let them talk. And some people will talk for 5 minutes, some will talk for 15 minutes nonstop without taking a breath. And I'll let them go because I want them to be able to tell their whole story. I want to hear their whole story.
Right.
People have 51 years of history, right?
I love that. I love that. You know, what's interesting is I also find that you might forget to ask certain questions because you don't have that much time. And then you'll leave the doctor's office going, oh, dang it, I forgot to ask, this, that, and the other. And that's because you do have that pressure to get it done. Although I do have to say, my doctor, Anton Tran in Los Angeles, he's not my doctor anymore because I don't live there in Maryland. He was a firm believer like you. He sat down and talked with people, and he found out a lot of the ailments were just the stresses that they were going through. And they didn't have anyone to talk through and to kind of talk it out. So I think that's just like a huge plus that you actually listen to your patients. Hey, I just wanted to thank my sponsor, Manning Media. These are the guys who have put this podcast together and make me sound so good. If you want to know how to reach your customer, Manning Media is the place to go. They can reach them online or on the air. They are absolutely the best. So reach out to them at manningmediainc.com. Some of my friends, they call it mommy juice, the wine. And I'm thinking, gosh, it feels like we're kind of numbing ourselves from a lot of the things that are going on instead of actually facing it and doing more healthy things that we can do. I mean, have you noticed that? Do you notice that people are kind of turning a little more to alcohol or other things to numb themselves and not really getting to the heart of it? And what does that do to your body? I know there's I think the wine industry came out and said, 1 glass of wine a day is healthy. Like red wine is really good for your heart. Is that true? I mean, is there not worrying about that? Or?
So there's a couple different ways you could look at it. So from the mind-numbing standpoint, the stress point, I think anxiety and stress is an epidemic in our country right now, and it's going off the charts. And it's part of the reason that we're developing more diabesity. Right, there's more diabetes and there's more overweight people in this country every day. It just keeps climbing. And I think that's a huge part of that is the stress and the anxiety that we're exposed to. For 100,000 years of evolution, we weren't exposed to a whole lot of stress other than the occasional saber-toothed tiger jumping on us. But that wasn't an everyday experience. Nowadays, we've got texts and cell phones, we've got bills, we've got cars cutting us off. You name it, there's probably 100 different stressors and little spikes in your cortisol and your stress hormones that are going on every day. So I think when we look at alcohol as numbing us, we're kind of avoiding the root cause, which is what integrative medicine wants to get at. What is happening underneath it? What are you trying to avoid and hide from? And I think you need to address it. Then the second point of that is alcohol good for you? Right. And there's pros and cons to that. So from alcohol standpoint, it's an irritant on your stomach, on your intestinal lining, so it does cause some inflammation. Inflammation's never a good thing. So you could argue that alcohol is bad in general because of that, and then it's eroding the villi. Maybe you're not able to absorb as many vitamins and minerals as easily. There's a high sugar content in a lot of the drinks, especially these ones that have additives. So I'm not even talking about the GMOs or pesticides or chemicals from the fake stuff that they put in there to color it and taste it. But you've got this actual sugar content, right? Gosh. So you're getting a lot of sugar in. And
you're drinking that right before you go to bed.
Right.
So that can't help your sleep.
No, it'll definitely mess up your stages of sleep, and you won't get as thorough a sleep, and you won't go through as many stages of sleep that you should, so that you can refresh your brain and get rid of those beta and tau amyloid proteins that you're making, things like that. So there's a lot of bad. And then there's the whole gluten issue with some of the drinks like beer and some of the alcohols. So there's a lot of negatives. Now, pros, there's the resveratrol, right? The red wine that you mentioned, the skin of the grape. And so there are several studies. There's a 2004, there's a 2008 study that all talk about the benefits of red wine, a glass or two a day. So you got to weigh it, right?
I know my mom likes that study. She's a firm believer in that one. Yeah. So you brought up gluten. There seems to be a lot of people allergic to gluten. I'm seeing a ton of gluten-free products out there. And just in general, being allergic to food. My husband and I talk about this all the time, that we think, gosh, I think we might be allergic to food that we don't even know we're allergic to. What's going on? And what is the whole gluten-free? How do you know if you're gluten-free or not gluten-free? Are there signs?
Well, yes and no. So gluten's a tough one. The reason that most people go gluten-free is because it's one of the proteins that we're most highly reactive to. So in general, you could tell somebody that's feeling bad, whether it's I have a lot of GI issues, or I have a lot of brain fog, or I have a lot of joints that are achy and painful. You can say, hey, go gluten-free for 6 weeks and see if you feel better. And it's just you're playing the odds that somebody's. Now, it's a very common protein that makes it through what's called leaky gut and makes it into our bloodstream. And gluten should never make it into our bloodstream. So not broken down, right? It should be broken down in our intestines. But a lot of us have leaky gut, and it gets in there and it causes inflammation, and it can be really bad, and particularly our autoimmune patients. So one of the areas I specialize in autoimmune, I deal a lot with Hashimoto's thyroiditis or multiple sclerosis, fibromyalgia, inflammatory bowel diseases. So all of those people need to go gluten-free, because what it's doing is it's causing more inflammation in their body. And even though some of those people may say, well, I've got the most normal bowel movements in the world, it's coming out in other ways.
My constitution is very good.
Right.
Well, now, it's in, go ahead.
I was going to answer your question about the food testing, because you mentioned testing for that, right?
Yeah, yes.
So there's 3 types of food reactions that you can have. So you can have a food allergy, a food intolerance, or a food sensitivity.
Okay, I love this.
Yeah,
I love this. I've not thought of it that way.
Food allergy
okay.
is when you had your 6-month-old or 1-year-old and you were exposing him or her to a peanut or an egg or dairy or something for the first time, you said, honey, go dial 911 and get ready to press 1, right? That's an allergy. When you break out in a rash because you eat, exactly, that's strawberry. But when you're 51 years old, like you and me, when we know whether or not we can eat a strawberry, right? We know what a peanut does to us. You should know by 51 years of just experience. Now, a food intolerance is when you eat dairy, you eat ice cream and you get gassy and bloated and you clear out the room.
Yes.
That's a food intolerance. And that's another one you learn by experience, right? Like, oh, yeah, I can't eat that unless I'm home alone and it's nighttime. But then there's a food sensitivity. And here's the sneaky thing about food sensitivities is they're not, allergists deal with food allergies. Those are the scratch tests, hey, I'm allergic to trees.
Right.
Food sensitivities are delayed allergies. So you can't do a scratch test for that. They're hours to days before they hit you. So think back 2 days ago and correlate what you ate 2 days ago with not only your GI symptoms, but let's say you don't have GI symptoms, but you have brain fog or you have fatigue. Or what if you have acne or eczema or psoriasis? All those can be related to food sensitivities. It's a whole different immunoglobulin. It's called IgG versus IgE is an allergy.
Okay.
And so it's a whole different way of testing. And it's something I do in my office because I think it's so important. But it's
so speaking of that, then would you recommend somebody just experiment, like say, okay, why don't you try not to eat gluten? Like take it, and how long do they need to do this for?
Well, so what you're describing is an elimination diet, which is awesome.
Is that good or no?
Elimination diets are awesome.
Are they? Okay, I like this.
Here's the problem. They're really difficult to do. Okay, I mean, you have to be dedicated.
Oh gosh, discipline.
Really,
that's a whole other show we can talk about. Discipline.
Hey, we all have our crosses to bear. But discipline for 6 weeks is really difficult, where you have to eliminate everything, stay on a very strict diet, and then you have to add each thing back in extremely slowly.
Wow.
Minimum every 3 to 4 days. And then you have to correlate it with your symptoms. And the problem is
oh my Lord.
Sure, if it causes you diarrhea, fine. That's you've got that one nailed.
Woohoo.
But what if it's just a little bit more fatigue, or it's a fatigue that builds up over the course of the week? It can be very subtle and very hard to detect. So there's
also a thing called life. You're living life. So, I mean,
life gets in the way.
Sounds like you're doing a clinical study on yourself.
You are.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. For every 100 people, I recommend doing that to maybe one. does it.
That's
It does
just
it
too
successfully.
hard. So, Dr. Hauser, can you please give us something easier than that, please?
Right. So we do a blood test in the office. We do a finger stick.
Okay.
It's super simple.
I can do that. Finger sticks, okay.
Yeah, my nutritionists actually do it, and it's super easy to
And that will let you know if you should back off of gluten or back off of something else?
Exactly. Yeah, and it ranks it, how strong of a reaction is it, a 1, 2, or 3, and how severely you have to back off it, what you have to do. And then, of course, working with me and the nutritionist, you're able to construct a plan. We'll give you recipes and whatnot to get you on that right track.
I like that.
Yeah.
Okay, I really like that. I wanted to talk to you something else about you have body composition analysis. That's a big thing that you do. Can you explain that to us?
Sure. So when you get on a scale at home and you look at a number.
I don't like that scale.
All right. What you're measuring is your total mass, right?
Okay.
Everything about you, from your hair to your fat to your muscle to your water, you name it. It's all just one number.
Yes.
So when you weigh yourself the next day.
I even take off my socks, by the way, because they're going to tip the scale.
When you weigh yourself, absolutely, you're including everything. So a bioimpedance scale, I have a very fancy scale in my office that actually sends small electrical signals through your arms and through your feet. And it's able to, through a lot of math, figure out exactly how much muscle, how much fat, how much water you have in your left arm, your left leg, right leg, up, down. It measures your basal metabolic rate, your percent body fat, and it breaks it all down. And that's so important because if you're coming to me because you want to lose weight, then I need to know, are you losing it correctly or incorrectly? So if you're losing weight by starving yourself, the first thing your body's going to do is break down skeletal muscle.
Oh, gosh, you don't want to lose muscle.
Exactly.
Especially as you get older. Muscle is very important.
Muscle is extremely important for your skeletal system, but also everybody is thinking, how am I going to look in that bathing suit, right?
Right.
And who doesn't want the six-pack or the defined arms or whatever?
Well, I'm kind of giving up on that, but okay.
It's not. And you need that muscle there, but the fat, that's the saddlebags that your body is preparing you for that imminent danger down the road.
Right.
So it knows when you're cheating, when you're starved, and I don't mean cheating by eating bad food. Of course it knows that. But when you starve yourself and exercise like a fiend, what you and I were taught as kids of the way to lose weight is completely wrong.
Okay.
And so by doing that, by starving yourself and exercising like a crazy man or crazy woman, you're going to lose muscle and your body's going to store the fat because the body says, danger, danger, Will.
Right.
This character is going out and it's the 100,000 years of evolution. They're putting us under a stress and we need to store that fat so that we can save him or her later.
Well, what's interesting is you can kind of get away with that when you're younger. But now that we're older, we're going to in our 50s and in our 60s and 70s, what does our body need to look like now? Because before we could get away with starving ourselves and working out and everything, we have time. But now, we have to be healthier and we have to look out for things like cancer and strokes. And so what would you say our body, are you more concerned about muscle? We don't want osteoporosis. A lot of women will start to see that, getting in their 50s and 60s. So what does that look like? Is it, stronger bones, stronger muscle, less fat? How much fat should we have? All of that. What would you say?
It's a combination. It really is a combination of all that you said. So one of the things I've learned over the years is it's extremely important for me to have nutritionists that work with me because I'd love to talk for hours about nutrition, but I just can't. I'm looking at lab values and working up diseases and constructing the plans. And so I have these nutritionists that are able to sit there for hours and hours and go through that bioimpedance and say exactly what portion of fat, what portion of protein, what portion of carbs you should be adding into your diet. And then what are you missing from a micronutrient standpoint? Because the apple that you're eating today is not the apple that you ate 20 or 50 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
It's changed.
It has changed.
Yeah, when they do the
We
studies.
can talk about food, like food production in a whole other episode. Seeds, even the seeds.
That's right. Yeah, they're just not the same. When you compare the the nutrients in it, they're not the same. They're 20% deficient in a lot of areas. So
wow, 20%. That's a lot.
Significant. And you think that's
Holy
just
cow.
an apple, which is good for me.
Okay, so I have to tell you, Mrs. Meduno, God rest her soul, she was my second mom. I'll never forget this. We were on the way to school. She was driving us to school, and she's eating her apple, and then she screams. Thank God she kept her hand on the wheel, one hand on the wheel, but she screams, and we're like, what's wrong? What's wrong? And I kid you not, there was half a worm in her apple.
Oh, gross.
But that's the way they were, right? Because there
Right.
weren't as many pesticides out.
Yeah.
But she literally ate half a worm.
Oh, that's pretty good. I mean,
But
a lot of protein.
It goes to show though that they didn't spray, as much as they do now.
Sure.
They spray pesticides and everything, and because no one wants to eat half a worm.
Well, there's some studies that show that if you were to test you or me right now, we'd find 300 or 500 different chemicals in our bodies.
Oh,
but look
dear.
at our ancestors from 100, 200 years ago, and you wouldn't find any unless, they lived on top of a uranium plant or something.
Or in Chernobyl.
Right.
But, that being said, we are still living longer than our ancestors. We are still living into, 80s, 90s. That's a lot more common. So I guess it's just a matter of figuring everything out. And I think a lot of what we're talking about here is diet. So you, my friend, I'm so excited to have this 5-step program that you came up with that's really cool, I think. That if you have any of these ailments, there's 5 steps that you can take before you go to see the doctor to see if there's just something. I know this isn't a cure-all, right? How did you come up with the 5 steps?
I wish it was a cure-all. Well, so I call myself an integrative and functional medicine doctor. And the functional medicine part is looking at the body from its core, finding out what is wrong at a very basic level, not just putting a Band-Aid on it. And so one of the things we always say is, if we could quit our job and go live on a beach, we could heal most ailments. And if you think about it, now it sounds kind of funny, but if you quit your job, you're getting rid of stress. If you're living on a beach, you're getting plenty of sunshine and fresh air away from all the pollutants and smog. You're eating fresh caught fish because you're hunting it yourself. You're waking up with the sun, going to bed with the sun, so you're getting plenty of sleep. And that really goes back to my 5 elements, which are nutrition, exercise, sleep, stress reduction, and then I added a 5th one, which is nutraceuticals, since nowadays we have supplements that can help us in ways like replacing that 20% deficiency in the apple, or if we have hypertension, helping us so that we avoid the hypertension.
Oh, that's great.
So those are my 5 areas.
Well, that's so great. Well, actually, if our listeners want to go and get a little more in depth of your 5-step program, you don't mind giving a freebie, right? Is that okay?
I don't mind. Sure.
Okay, so this is a freebie. Dr. Hauser would love for you to look at his 5-step program. If you go to thenewmid.com, you can click on that and it'll send you to get the free 5 steps. And Dr. Hauser, how can people reach you?
The easiest way would go to my website, which is hauserhealth.com. And Hauser is spelled with an A, so H-A-U, hauserhealth.com. And if they want to reach out to me, they can. There's an email link on there that they can email me. And then I actually have 2 podcasts that I'd love people to listen to.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's great. What are your podcasts?
Well, my first one is called the Alt Medicine MD podcast, and the website for that is Alt Medicine MD. So
pretty
great. Straightforward. And that's going to be talking about exactly what we're talking about today, is the integrative and functional medicine ways to get better. So I'm interviewing doctors from around the country that are integrative and can help us solve these issues.
Oh, I love that.
And then my other one that I've been doing for a while is called the Med Podcast.
Okay.
So I'm a clinical director for a medical cannabis dispensary in Maryland. And so I do a show that's purely about medical cannabis and how the pros and cons and how it can help you overcome your issues using prescribed medical cannabis.
That sounds great. That sounds wonderful. Well, this has been such a great interview. I can't believe it's already over. It's gone by so fast. I know there's so much more to talk about. I think I might have to have you back if that's okay.
Oh, I'd love to.
Well, have a great rest of your day. And listeners, if you like this, please share it. Please rate it wherever you're listening. And until next time, we'll see you and help you live an abundant second half. Hey, Hey, I'd love to hear what you thought about the show. It'd be really helpful for me if you could subscribe and rate this show and leave a comment wherever you tune in. Also, you can link up with me, and I'd love that if you did, on social media. Just put The New Mid in the search bar or go to my website, thenewmid.com. That's THENEWMID.com. And if you have friends that you think might enjoy living their best second half, please share. I'm so grateful for this time we've had together. Until next time, go live an abundant second half. Are you getting close to ending your career or being an empty nester? Are you holding on to more pounds than you'd like? Is there an empty feeling inside you? Do you worry about your kids or your aging parents? Are you wondering, is this it or what's next? If you answered yes to any of those questions, let me help you start living an abundant second half. No matter where you are in your journey, I will help you design a plan to take action and control of your life. It's time to start living the life you've always dreamed of and stop all the negative talk. There's no time to waste, because if you don't do it now, when are you going to do it? Go to my website, thenewmid.com, THENEWMID.com, to book a free call. I can't wait to help you get started living an abundant second half.